All right, my friends. Once again, we're bringing back Danielle Roberts from BoomerBenefits.com. It is a critical time for Medicare stuff. I'm telling you right now, October is open season, not just for hunting, but actually for healthcare. And Danielle, I just introduced him to my little new personal assistant, Pablo, who I literally just had to chase through the woods in my backyard to get because he was chasing a deer. And of course, a deer would have trounced him because he's only 12 pounds.
You know.
So, Daniel, I get a lot, just tons and tons of questions about Medicare. So I asked if you would mind just kind of coming back online and just going over what's going on, because there's a big changes coming down the pike. And I saw that, well, let's just start with that. So tell us what's going on with the changes coming down the pike, what people need to be doing for open enrollment and whatnot, and we'll just go from there.
Sure. Okay, so we have two main things happening this October. One of them is the annual election period, also called the fall open enrollment, which happens every October. Okay. We also have the end of Plan C and F that's happening right now. So let's address that first, and then we'll move into the regular stuff.
Jeez.
So a few years ago, Congress passed a law against what they call Cadillac Medigap plans. So Plan F is the plan that you can buy that literally covers every deductible, copay, and coinsurance on Medicare, so that every time you use your coverage at a healthcare service provider, there's literally nothing out of pocket.
Okay.
And then Plan C does that exact same thing, but there's one little excess charge that you may run into sometimes on that plan. But the big thing is they don't want you to have any plan that covers your Part B deductible anymore. So in 2019, your Part B, which is your outpatient coverage deductible, is $185. And the first healthcare service of the year that you have, whether it's lab work or a doctor's appointment, that's when you're going to run into that. And so what they think is that if they make everyone pay that deductible out of their own pocket, then people will think twice about running to the doctor over every little sneeze or sniffle. And so they're ending those plans. And the way that works is they're discontinuing the plans for anyone who's new to Medicare on or after January 1st of 2020.
Okay.
There's a lot of information out there that's wrong about this, where people think you have to already be on Plan C or Plan F and only those people are grandfathered. That is not the case.
Okay.
If you're eligible for Medicare before January, you will always be able to buy those plans, and Plan F is the one that's the most popular. You'll always be able to buy Plan F for as long as carriers continue to offer it.
Okay.
So it's only the new enrollees that won't have the chance. And if that happens to be you and you're a new enrollee coming into Medicare, don't sweat that, because Plan G is almost as good as Plan F. The only thing you'll ever pay is that outpatient deductible, and then it covers just like Plan F after that.
Okay.
And often it's a better value than Plan F because the premiums are lower since you're agreeing to pay your own outpatient deductible. So that's what everybody needs to know about what's changing with Medigap. And after 2020, that will be done and behind us.
And so when you said the deductible, that's just one time, right?
Once a year.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, that's right. On the outpatient side, it's just a one-time deductible.
Okay.
So we have had lots and lots of questions about that, and I don't want people to think that they have to run out there and hurry up and sign up for Plan F, or they'll never get it. As long as you're 65 before January 1 of 2020, you'll always be able to buy it, or get back to it if you want to.
But you have to be in Medicare right now by January 1st, 2020 in order to be qualified for future Plan F.
That's right. Yeah, you have to be aging into Medicare no later than December. So people that are starting Medicare January 1, they won't have that option.
Okay.
And this even applies to people who are still working, who maybe like a few years ago turned 65 and they didn't join Medicare because they have work coverage. They will still be able to always get Plan F if they want it.
Okay.
So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
So as long as you age into Medicare by 1 January 2020, you'll still have the option to choose Plan F in the future. Okay.
Yes, that's exactly right.
But Plan F is a little bit more expensive than Plan G because you have the $185.
Yeah, of course. And it's surprising to me, a lot of people don't care about that. They want the Plan F so they never get a bill in the mailbox, even if it costs them more over the course of the year. I'm always for saving any dollar that can go in your pocket instead of an insurance company's pocket, but there are people out there that just like the convenience of no bill ever coming in the mail. And so we're losing that. But the good news is you're only going to get the one bill for your deductible. And then after that, it'll be just like Plan F.
I'm just curious in your experience, in terms of you go to doctor over here, then you go to doctor over here, how did they coordinate if you met your deductible or not?
Yeah, so both of those doctors are going to send their bills to Medicare, and whichever bill that Medicare processes first,
Okay.
they will apply that deductible. So then when they receive the next bill, then that deductible, Medicare will be like, oops, we already applied the deductible to this one, and they pay that way. So
All right, so it's not
Medicare
the
has your
doctor,
supplement information on file.
it goes to Medicare, not the doctor, to determine who pays the deductible.
Yeah, that's right. And I do always tell people, if you have a doctor who looks at your plan and says, well, we need you to pay that $185 here, we tell them not to do that. Because if you go and have lab work done the same day and the lab files their paperwork with Medicare first, Medicare will apply that deductible to the lab, where now you owe it and you've got to chase your doctor down to get the $185 back. So always say, hey, no, I'm going to wait for Medicare to process the bill. Then you guys send me a bill for the $185 and I'll pay it then.
Okay. No, that's good knowledge.
A little tip to avoid some hassle.
No, absolutely. Okay. And hey, just what's your experience with, I'm just curious why, because I've had a number of clients lately that maybe have like a teacher, like Texas retirement system. They might have some benefit through the teachers union or something like that, where they cover health care. Obviously, they go to Medicare, but the teachers and, public unit pensions, police officers, whatnot, do they typically cover the supplemental policy? Do you know? I know it's hard to say across the board, but generally speaking, is that something that, public employees' pensions and whatnot, in terms of the benefits will cover, or is that something they still have to pay out of pocket, generally speaking?
Yeah, it does depend on the state, but a lot of states have a teacher retirement program.
Right.
So it'll be some sort of Medicare plan, and it depends on how well it's funded. I know that like here in Texas, our teachers, the only option they have is a group Medicare Advantage plan. So if their doctor's not on that plan, it's not good for them. And it's also really expensive. We can get them on Medicare with a supplement and Part D cheaper than what they pay to stay on that teacher retirement plan for an Advantage. So I know here a lot of them will roll to Medicare. But in other states, the funding for teacher retirement may be different. And so government employees typically are going to have some sort of coverage. If they're a federal employee, they'll have the FEHB benefits, and they can choose whether or not they want to enroll in Medicare to coordinate with that. If it's teacher retirement, then it'll be by the state. So what I usually tell them is when they're getting ready to turn 65, that government entity is going to send them a paperwork and packet. That's a great time for you to take that packet, call a Medicare insurance broker like us. We'll look at it and tell you whether it's in your best interest to stay. A lot of times we look at that coverage and we're like, hey, this is pretty good. You should keep this coverage unless something really changes with it. If you are able to get a government coverage and you're paying $50 or $100 a month for it, that's going to be cheaper than what you're even going to pay for Medicare Part B. So it'll make sense for you to stick with that coverage. But in some states, kind of like the Texas one, the coverage isn't so good. And if that's the case, we can at least show you your options so that you can choose, hey, this is the route that I want to go.
The FEHB, does that generally, that's probably pretty good, but does that preclude Medicare? They're still getting on Medicare. Just question whether they have to pay Part B, Part D, and supplement out of pocket, right? So,
exactly. We always tell them, go ahead and enroll in Part A. And we have a video about the FEHB benefits on the Boomer Benefits channel. And it'll basically show you your three options, whether you can just enroll in Part A, and then you're going to have some co-pays out of pocket for your outpatient stuff when you use benefits, or you can enroll in the FEHB and A and B, and then you're going to have very little co-pays out of pocket, but it's going to cost you more. So you have to decide, do I want to spend that Part B premium so that I have lesser co-pays on the back end, or would I rather keep that premium and just pay the co-pays as I go along? So they're usually trying to decide if they want, A or both A and B.
With a supplemental or Medicare Advantage, is that usually thrown in there too, or?
They don't need that. Yeah, so the federal employee health benefits functions basically as the main coverage, and then they're just adding the A or B to it. So they don't typically need a supplement unless for some reason they don't like those benefits. They can, of course, leave that coverage or suspend that coverage and go on traditional Medicare with a Medigap. But usually when we look at it, it looks like it's a good option for them. It has good drug coverage. So if you take a lot of drugs, sometimes keeping your government insurance might be better than doing a standalone Part D plan where you've got the coverage gap and a big deductible.
Same with TRICARE too, right? You don't need a supplement if you're on TRICARE for life.
That's right. So you do need both A and B for TRICARE. You have to have B on that one, but TRICARE for life will function as your secondary, and it does have drug coverage, so you could skip the enrollment into the Part D drug plan.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So what's going on with I get the Part C, Part F, and all that, but how about what's going on Medicare Advantage? I know that's anything coming down the pike for that too.
Sure. So a couple of things. One is that in 2019, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services announced, actually in 2018, they announced that beginning in 2019, Advantage companies could start to include what are called supplemental home health benefits. And the announcement came so late in the year in 2018 that they really didn't get a lot of that stuff into their plans for 2019.
Okay.
But we expect more in 2020. You might see Advantage plans out there now that come with things like telemedicine, and they'll pay for safety modifications in your home, like a wheelchair ramp or bathroom grab bars. They might pay for adult daycare, transportation, meal delivery. So people with certain chronic illnesses have trouble with these kind of things that happen on sort of a level outside of just medical. And so now some of the Advantage plans are starting to incorporate some of those benefits. So if that's a benefit that you need, it's to your advantage to look and see, hey, what are the Advantage plans in my area offering next year? Yeah, you might be able to find one that has a little bit of something you need in it. So we expect to see many more plans offering those for 2020. And then, of course, the annual election period that we're coming up on here from October 15th to December 7th is why your phone blows up with telemarketers and your mailbox is full of solicitations. And so what people need to know about the annual election period in the fall is that in September, you received a big old doorstopper of a packet from your current drug plan or Advantage plan. And in that packet, it will show you everything that's changing with your current plan. One of the things that we see happen every year is that people look at that packet and, hey, listen, nobody wants to open this packet. It's Medicare, boring, big old book, but you need to open it because it might be telling you that your drug plan, which costs $27 this year, is going up to $54 next year. It might be telling you that it's dropping one of your most important medications. So you got to review that so that if you decide not to make a change, you at least know what's going to change anyway with your current plan instead of you finding out in January when it's too late. So open it up, give it a 10-minute review. It'll line everything up side by side, 2019, 2020, so that you can see, hey, if a doctor copay is changing, if a hospital copay is changing, that's all going to be in there. Now, if you don't like the changes or if you've been unhappy with something about your Part D or Advantage plan anytime this year, the annual election period is when you can make a change to a different Advantage plan or to a different drug plan, or you can go from an Advantage plan back to original Medicare or from original Medicare into an Advantage plan. What you can't do in the annual election period is apply for a Medigap plan and get to skip the health questions and be automatically approved. So if you are in an Advantage plan and you want to go back to original Medicare, it's very important for you to understand that in most cases, you'll have to answer health questions on that Medigap application, and you could be turned down if you have health conditions. So sometimes what we see is people will be in an Advantage plan and they don't like it, so they go ahead and disenroll, then they apply for the Medigap plan, then they get turned down. Now they have just original Medicare, and they're scrambling. So it's really important if you're planning on going from Advantage to Medigap, apply for that Medigap plan right out of the chute in October, wait for the approval for 1/1, then cancel your Advantage plan and enroll in a drug plan. You've got to do those steps in order. And of course, if you're working with a broker like us, we walk people through that, but a lot of the general public has no idea about these rules, so they do things out of order and then they get themselves into trouble. So it's really important to know that the annual election period has nothing to do with your Medigap plan. Your Medigap plan never changes benefits. It might have a rate increase, but the rate increase isn't necessarily January 1st. It's usually on your policy anniversary date. So if you signed up on August 1st, you aren't going to get that rate increase until the following August. So I like to tell people in the fall, the one thing you don't need to worry about is your Medigap plan. You can focus on getting the right drug plan or making a change into an Advantage plan. Advantage plans only have one health question, which is, do you have end-stage renal disease? So you can easily switch from one Advantage plan to another, and you've only got to deal with the one question. You can also easily go from Medigap into an Advantage plan. It's the other direction that's a little trickier.
How long does it take for them to underwrite to go to the original Medicare?
So if they apply for the Medigap plan first and they do it early here in October before the procrastinators all do everything at the end of November, you might be able to get that policy approved in a week or two. Once we get into November and they're getting, millions of applications from all over the US, it takes longer. So you want to allow yourself a couple of weeks if you wait that long, which means you need to get on it pretty quick because you need that answer before December 7th so that you can decide whether you need to choose a different Advantage plan
Right,
because you just got
exactly.
turned down by your Medigap plan, or you could decide if you're just going to run with straight Medicare and Part D, and you'll have to make that decision. So do that Medigap application early. That way you won't have to worry about running out of time.
Does a Medigap application, they take blood and heart rate and all that, EKG and all that stuff?
Fortunately not. So the
Okay.
type of things that you're used to with like a life insurance
Exactly.
application,
Right.
you
Right.
don't have to do that.
Oh,
You will
okay.
answer a page of health questions.
Okay.
And see, this is where carriers ask different questions. So if someone
Uh-huh.
comes to me and says, well, I have atrial fibrillation, well, we know 1 or 2 carriers that would be okay with that, whereas the other ones would decline you for that.
Okay.
So we might be able to find a carrier where the health condition that you have is not going to be a problem. Also, you don't have to worry that things like if your blood pressure is a little high or your cholesterol is a little high, if you take
Right.
a thyroid medication or sleeping medication, these typically aren't going to be issues. They're more worried about people that have chronic conditions or who are taking heavy pain medications that indicate a much more serious thing that
Okay.
could cost the company money down the line. So those are the types of questions they ask. Now, if you answer yes to one of the health questions,
Right.
sometimes as an agent, we have to tell you we can't even submit the application. It's a decline at the agent level.
Oh.
Other carriers will have us go ahead and submit, and then if they decline you, you'll get a call from the underwriter that's going to tell you exactly what's happening
Oh, you
there.
actually get a phone call by somebody?
A lot of times you'll get a phone call. They'll either call you or us. If they call
Yeah.
us, we'll call our client and tell them.
Gotcha.
And so again, doing it in a timely manner is important. They can pull your prescription history. So
Okay.
if your viewers may or may not know this, but there is a big brother out there. It's called ScriptNet, I think. And every prescription you've ever taken is in this database. And so they can very easily pull up prescriptions that you've taken in the last few years. And where you can sometimes run into a problem is if your doctor prescribed something, but you never filled it or took it, or you did fill it, but you never continued it, that's still going to show up like you took that medication. So let's say you had a pre-diabetes and the doctor
Right.
prescribed a diabetes medicine a couple years ago and you decided not to take it. You may have forgotten all about that, but the underwriter is going to catch that and want to know, okay, do
Really?
you have diabetes? What's going on here?
So
So,
even if, just because a doc prescribes it,
mhm.
I don't want Blunted or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
High blood pressure. I don't want anything to do with that. But let's just say doc said, hey Josh, you have high blood pressure. We're going to give you this drug. I said, I don't want anything to do with it. That still shows up on my record, even if I don't take it?
It'll show up if you fill it. So once you present it to the pharmacist, that will go into the record.
So to the pharmacist, gotcha.
Yeah, that's right. So if he prescribes you something and you don't want that on your record or taking it, you need to tell him right there, nope, don't write that prescription. And a lot of people, that'll mess them up. But for the most part, I would say about 75% of the applications that we put through get approved. And that's because we go through the health questions first and we let people know, if they can change or not. Now, you might be someone who has a Medigap plan and you thought that you were waiting for the annual election period to change the Medigap plan, and you want to change it because you had a rate increase this year and it was 13%, and you want to find out if you can get the same supplement somewhere else cheaper.
Right.
You can apply for that plan any time of year. So you could do it now during open enrollment. It's just that open enrollment isn't going to make you not have to answer the health questions. So if you're shopping your Medigap plan because it's expensive and you want to see if you can get a better premium somewhere else, it's okay to make that change now. Just be aware, health questions are typically going to be part of that process, unless you live in like New York or Washington where they have year-round open enrollment.
Do you know in advance what the premium's going to be on Medigap, or like life insurance, they say, well, it depends on underwriting?
Yeah, we'll know for sure up front. So we'll quote you exactly. If you're going to get this policy, it's going to be X dollars. They don't do rate ups. It's either an accept or a decline in most cases.
All right, so we got open enrollment is for switching from Medigap plans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you got annual election period, which is from choosing Medicare Advantage plans. Is that right?
Drug plans.
Or Part D, okay.
Yeah,
so they're two completely different things, though. You got open enrollment for Medigap supplemental policy, annual election for drug plans, Part D, or Medicare Advantage.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that open enrollment for Medigap is specific to you. It starts with your Part B effective date, and it goes for 6 months, and then it's gone forever. It's a one-time shot. So sometimes, let's say I have somebody and they have Parkinson's. So we're going to get them set up on that Medigap plan right out of the gate at Medicare. We're going to use that open enrollment window. Well, now the next year, when they get a rate increase, they're not going to have anywhere they can usually go. If they were to try to change carriers, they've got to answer health questions, and they could be turned down in most states. There are some states, like I mentioned, New York and Washington, but also California, Oregon, and I think Missouri, Connecticut, and some carriers in Vermont. They'll have this thing like a birthday rule open enrollment. So once a year during the 30 years surrounding your birthday in California, you can change from an existing Medigap plan to another Medigap plan of equal or lesser value. But you can't just go from an Advantage plan back into a Medigap with questions.
No, there's no state that allows you to go from Medicare Advantage to a Medigap plan without being
the only states where you could do that are going to be New York and Washington. And of course, that's why the plans
Medicare Advantage to Medigap in those two states without
the thing there is just you can enroll in Medigap anytime in those states, and it's open enrollment, which of course is what makes the supplement so expensive there. They're very expensive in those two states, but that's because the carriers have to accept everybody, even if they have very serious health conditions.
Just out of curiosity, any idea how much more expensive those two states are versus, some Texas or Georgia?
Yeah, so like in Texas, we're pretty affordable. Like a turning 65 female can get a plan G for around $100, and that same plan in New York might be $250 or $260.
Wow.
In Florida, the same, also very expensive in Florida. They don't have year-round open enrollment. It's just they have such a big senior population there, and so the cost of healthcare is just really high in that area.
Interesting.
Sometimes you might move and you go from a state like Florida to Texas, and you'll be very pleasantly surprised to see how much your premium will come down on your Medigap plan.
If you do that, well, you're not excluded from keeping your current Medigap plan, right? I mean, guys. So it's not.
You can take them with you. They're nationwide.
Okay. Because any doc enrolled in Medicare, they have to accept you if you're in Medigap.
Yeah, that's right. So the carrier will just notice that, you'll call in with your address change, and they'll say, okay, here's the premium in your new zip code. So when you move from state to state, your plan goes with you, but it can change your premium.
But Medicare Advantage would be different because it's very county specific for heaven's sake. You know what I'm saying? So if you move, you definitely need to be looking.
Yeah.
So what if you move in July? Can you change Medicare Advantage plans in July?
You sure can. Yeah, that move, if you move out of the plan service area, you'll have a special election period to either enroll in a different Advantage plan or to now join a Medigap plan, because you lose your Advantage plan through no fault of your own. Now you can join a Medigap plan under guaranteed issue where you don't have to answer health questions because you've changed states or counties. So you can go from an Advantage plan if you're leaving the service area and you're no longer living there. That makes you lose the Advantage plan through no fault of your own. You're moving into a new state. Now you can either enroll in an Advantage plan in that state, or you can pick up a Medigap plan and you don't have to answer health questions.
Oh, so let's just say I'm 72, you know what I'm saying? And I don't know, I'm a hurting unit, and my Medicare Advantage plan isn't great for where I'm, and so I said, well, I'm going to pick up and move to Washington State, any state. I guess it doesn't have to be Washington, New York. I could pick up and move to Texas.
Yes.
It's guaranteed issue, even though I'm beyond 65 because I moved?
Because you moved, because you're losing that Advantage plan, it creates a guaranteed issue. And so over the years, I have actually seen a few people do exactly that. Most people love their Advantage plan until they get sick.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they have bills left and right. Cancer is usually the one that costs so much money. So they might shell out $6,000 in a couple of months on their chemo treatment on their Advantage plan. And they are just like, wow, I wish I had done that Medigap plan. I wish I hadn't gone with this cheaper coverage. And so then I have literally seen people in that situation move out of state or out of that county simply to get into a Medigap plan. We've actually seen people do that over the years. A lot of times the ones that do it already have a home in two areas, so they're switching their home address on file with Social Security to a different address. We've seen them do that. It's not something we encourage or promote, but people know the rules out there. And once they figure that out, if it's important enough for them to get back to Medigap, I've had people call us before who said, hey, I just changed my plan. Here's why.
No, we didn't set the rule. I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know. I mean, we didn't set the rules. It's just the rules are the rules, and you follow the rules.
Just like taxes, you're going to take advantage of loopholes when you can.
I didn't know that, Danielle. That's interesting. That would open up. So, but with Medicare Advantage, there is an out-of-pocket limit. If you wonder what I'm looking at this guy right here. He keeps bouncing up around. So if you're just wondering why is he looking like that, it's because my little puppy here, he likes some attention too.
Oh, he's so cute.
Some camera time. But Medicare Advantage, you said the $6,000 for the cancer people, but there is an out-of-pocket extent at the max they can pay, right?
Yeah. And so what we tell people here, I'd say probably about 10 to 20% of the people that come into Boomer Benefits choose an Advantage plan. And that's less than the national average, but it's because we tell them up front, here's what people like, here's what people don't like. What do you think?
Right.
And when they're coming into an Advantage plan, if that Advantage plan, let's say, has a $5,000 out-of-pocket maximum, and in the summary of benefits, we can see that if they're going to need chemo, they're going to pay 20%. They're going to hit that out-of-pocket maximum. We tell them, go ahead and make a rainy day fund. That money that you would have spent on a supplement, put it in a fund that's waiting for a day like that. So if you have a bad year in the future with your Advantage plan and it's expensive, you've got some of that money kind of waiting for those expenses. And it won't panic you quite so much when those bills start trickling in that you're not used to.
Or just buy the Medigap outright, pay an extra $100 a month, and just be done with it, right?
Of course, the Medigap plans are more comprehensive,
right?
And but there's reasons why people like Advantage plans, and so you just kind of have to evaluate your own situation and see which one feels right for your needs, your budget, your health, all those things.
Did you say the Medicare Advantage plans now have home health care services too, like where you can get a nurse to come to your house? And
some of them do. So it's with original Medicare, they've never covered custodial care, meaning you can't have someone out to cook for you or clean, to help you bathe or get dressed. That only comes in if you're already receiving skilled care, and the skilled care nurse just happens to provide a little in-home support as well. That's the way it works with original Medicare, and that's how it's been with Advantage plans. But now they've approved for Advantage plans to be able to offer some extras there. So you might find an Advantage plan that will provide you 5 or 10 hours a week of an aide to come to your home, or you might find one that covers 3 days a month of adult daycare if your child is a caregiver, and you can take advantage of that so that they have a respite day. That's a good thing. The aim of this was to take chronically ill people and enable them to live as long as possible independently. So, the idea is if you have an Advantage plan that can offer you those couple of things, maybe that extends your ability to stay in your own home an extra year or two, which cuts down then on Medicaid expenses for people that don't have long-term care insurance and end up having to use Medicaid to pay for long-term care. So I'll be really interested as we go through this annual election period to see which carriers in which states take advantage of those benefits and market them so that people know about them and can say, hey, maybe I want some of that. It'll be really interesting to see how many of them start incorporating those benefits.
Well, the interesting thing is we all know Medicaid is dying on the vine as we sit here. There's no getting around that. So everyone talks about Social Security. I always say, look, of the big three, Social Security is by far and away the best funded. Medicaid's the worst. So obviously the government has an incentive to get people off Medicaid and into a more that's
Pablo says yes for that. You tell him, buddy.
Get people into more of a cost-effective program than Medicaid. I can definitely see that. That's interesting. All right, so I got a question for you. This is just an object. I read an article the other day by a guy named Larry Kotlikoff, who's a professor over at BU. Huge fan of Kotlikoff. He knows everything about Social Security that possibly could be. He had written this article about Medicare Advantage for all. And I know you probably haven't read it, I get that. But what's your so his thing is not Medicare for all like Bernie, but actually Medicare Advantage for all.
Yes.
That's of interest to me. And I just wondered, have any thoughts on that for just, to get people, because it sucks. You're 60 years old. You're working your crappy old job. You're like, I want to leave my crappy old job, but I got diabetes, or I just can't leave, and I won't be able to afford Obamacare, whatever it is. I'm not, whatever it is. And you're like, this is nuts. There's got to be a way to say we can go where you don't have to work your crappy old job to something else to be a little bit more productive. And Kolikoff's argument is Medicare Advantage for all would kind of take care of that. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's actually a pretty real possibility. So there's a couple ways that this has been proposed. The first time someone came up with this type of plan, and it's before this congressional session. Certainly this idea has been floated before, but there's a bill in Congress called Medicare at 50, which is actually the bill was sponsored by, I think it's Debbie Stabenow, a Democrat out of Michigan.
Yeah, right.
And so her bill, Medicare at 50, would just take the current Medicare program and let people buy in at 50, but they would buy into Advantage plans. And so what this does is it makes the insurance lobby happy because they still are in the game.
Yeah.
right? It saves money, a lot of money, because insurance companies manage our government's Medicare dollars better than Medicare itself.
Exactly.
Go figure,
That's the
right? They're
point.
they're
Exactly.
in business to have a profit, so they manage those dollars really well. And it would also help to insure a group of uninsured, because of exactly what you just mentioned. These people, they either have a early job
Yeah.
loss, like, they're 55 and now they've lost their job, or their spouse goes on Medicare, so they lose that group health insurance.
Yeah.
And buying a plan through the Affordable Care Act can cost, $1,200 a month for a $6,500 deductible. It's super expensive.
Per
But if you were
person.
to, yes, very expensive per person.
Right.
And if you were to offer that coverage where people could get into it at 50, it would be cheaper. And her bill actually allows them to use the Affordable Care Act subsidy to apply toward the cost of the coverage as well. So that one's been out there for a while. And then, of course, just last week, Trump held the press conference, and he's promoting Medicare, kind of the idea of Medicare Advantage for all. And so I think, it will be a big leap for the nation to go from what we have now to the type of Medicare for all, where everything is free and nobody pays anything. That's not how Medicare is today. That's not how it exists at all.
That's what I
It
tell
costs
you.
money. And so
Yeah.
I don't
A
see,
lot of money too.
yes, and I don't see these people in Congress agreeing well enough, or at any point, to make that happen in this next election. I'd be surprised if it did. But I do think what you might find is whoever gets in office, and not only just in the presidential level, but in House and Senate, they may afterwards come together and be like, okay, look, we got to work something out here. And often we see them, work together then to try to find something in the middle. And I think something like the Medicare at 50 or Medicare Advantage for all is a very real possibility for that, because it's a system that people already know, like, and trust. And especially if they could still use their subsidies for low income on the ACA and apply those then, like proposed in the Medicare at 50 bill, that's this is something that we could actually really see them doing, just from my knowledge of the industry. And I'm not promoting one way or the other, but I think it'll be really interesting to see how this plays out, because certainly healthcare and Medicare are going to be one of the top items in this next year of election process. I think it'll be one of the most hotly debated things. And so maybe we'll even see other ideas come out, other bills that are being proposed, where we offer something along the lines of what we currently have with Medicare Advantage or Medicare.
That's interesting. We don't need a single payer. A single payer is silly, but the idea of having some kind of public option, some kind of guaranteed issue, for folks. But I don't know. The idea that you have to stay at your crap bill job when you're 60, just because of health, that sucks. No one wants to deal with that. We all get it, that at some point that is not a good use of someone's time, energy, what their brain power is. But it's like, what else are you going to do? You can't afford the Obamacare. You probably want to get issued. And so but you also don't want single payer where the government is in charge of everything, because we know that's just a fraud.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
This is where it seems like maybe they're coming up with something that really could be the next thing that we try as a nation. So I love the pomp and circumstance of it all. I love to see when they debate all these things and look to see. And of course, with my industry, Medicare is not going to go anywhere. You're going to either have it be expanded, or they're not going to take away this entitlement program. But we do need to be careful that we protect what we have for the seniors that are already on Medicare. And it seems like that option might be something that would.
Well, the same thing with Social Security. I get it all the time. Well, Social Security won't be there. I said, tell me when they've actually taken money from – I just want to know. Tell me when they've taken money from recipients where they said, thank you, Danielle. We're going to take $1,000 a month away that you were expecting for the rest of your life. Yeah, it's not going to happen.
That'd be political suicide.
Anything else that jumps out at you, Medicare related, that people need to know about, Danielle? Anything else that's on your mind that you'd like to tell the group here at Heritage Wealth Planning?
Well, if you have questions related to Medicare or anything we've discussed today, you can come on over to Facebook and join the Facebook Boomer Benefits Facebook group. It's called Medicare Q&A with Boomer Benefits. And so if people have a question, they can come and join our free Facebook group, and we answer questions there all day long for people that are, free of charge. So if you have a question that comes up about the annual election period, that's certainly a great way to find us. And then just remember, look for that packet if you haven't opened it yet. your current plan is changing. So you need to look at that and make sure, I always hate in January when a client calls in, now suddenly they have a $600 medication and it's not covered. Now we're trying to fill a drug exception, trying to get the carrier to cover a drug that they just informed the client was being dropped, but the client didn't look at their packet. So, with Medicare, if you have a Part D drug plan or Advantage plan, you've got to do your homework every year. It doesn't take a lot. And if you're uncomfortable doing that homework yourself, you don't understand how to look through it, that's when you reach out to your agent or broker and have them walk you through, here's what's changing, and interpret it for you so that you feel comfortable about what's happening, and then you can decide, am I staying or leaving? Most people don't switch. Percentage-wise, most people keep their current plans, but this year we did see some big swings on the Part D premium. You don't want to walk into January and suddenly have, twice as much money being deducted from your bank account because you didn't even know the premium was going up.
And no, absolutely. I'll put a link on the FEHB video that you've done too. I'll put a link on that because that's Boomer Benefits YouTube channel. Just Boomer Benefits YouTube channel, right?
Yes.
Okay, and I'll put a link to that for my friends. Do you have like a newsletter or anything like that, an email list that people can sign up for?
Yeah, actually we do. And we can give you a link for that, which you can drop down here below the video, and they can go, they can either go to our site and request help from one of our agents, or they can sign up for like their free email course. We have a 6-day Medicare.
Yes, that's right. The email course. Yep.
Yeah. And we can direct people into that. And that's just 6 emails in a row. Each one has a description about something people who are new to Medicare need to know, and then a video from yours truly teaching that same subject. So if you're an audio visual learner, you can watch the video. If you're a reader, you can read the email. Either way, we're providing that information in a format that people can learn what to do. So, if you are new to Medicare during this annual election period, sometimes people feel like they need to make a decision by December 7th, but you're new to Medicare initial enrollment supersedes that. So if you're turning 65 in January or February, you don't have to rush and get anything done by December 7th. You have your initial enrollment period that is bigger and broader than just the annual election period.
Well, I did, Pablo and I sat for that 6 video tutorial as well. And it is one email a day. So I highly recommend people doing that. It's free. It doesn't cost anything. And it's,
and we keep them short. The videos aren't very long, so you won't spend a lot of time on them.
And also the word that I think, well, I'll speak on behalf of, no one told me this, but just people say, I don't want to be solicited every which way to Sunday. And we all know that. We're like, just give me your email and I promise you the stock tip of the day next when I signed up for Motley Fool. I did it for my audience. I said,
I've heard this before.
Let me take the arrows. The next time I'm like, holy crap, these guys are emailing me 20,000 times a day. Danielle's not going to do that, my friends. I promise you that.
Nope.
For sure.
It's just a series and then it's done.
I sent Pablo to her house to bite.
You could do that. I would have him come to my house any day.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, Danielle. So I'll get this out there. And thanks again for coming on. Let's try to do this, a couple times a year for sure.
You bet. We appreciate it. I always love talking with your viewers, and have a great day. Bye,
Thanks,
Pablo.